Welcome to Working Dogs and Whiskey. Join Sean White and Jonathan Moses as they pour a glass and dive into insightful and fun conversations about dogs in all their incredible roles. So grab your favorite drink and let's raise a glass to great stories, laughs, and a whole lot of dog talk.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Working Dogs and Whiskey. I'm Sean White, and I'm sitting here with my friend, co-host Jonathan Moses. And tonight we have another special guest, another Erik, for our interview for this month. Erik Good, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
No, we appreciate you taking the time out and just getting with us. Now, I know you got things to do tonight, so we'll go ahead and jump right in, man. If you could just give us a little bit of your background, like how you got into dogs and kind of where you're at now, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I started out in law enforcement, and that's what led me to dogs. So as a police officer, I always canine guys were the guys that were getting into the fun stuff. They were initiating car chases, bailouts, foot pursuits, and they seemed to be the guys that were the tip of the spear and doing the good stuff. So that drove me to want to go to canine, and I went to canine and, got very fortunate. Was able to go to canine with 3 years on, and I've been there ever since. So that's how the dog stuff started with me.
Oh, nice, dude. And so now you're the trainer at your department?
Yeah, I'm the head trainer for Fort Lauderdale Police Department canine unit. We have close to 20 dogs in my unit. We're single purpose apprehension, so criminal apprehension only. We're very spoiled and lucky that we don't have to do the dual purpose thing, but I'm not in charge of the detection dogs. I help them out from time to time, but they're their own unit, which is actually great for a bunch of reasons. They can search people, find a lot of dope on people that, the dogs aren't trained to bite. So it works out for both units. If any agency has the capability of going single purpose patrol and single purpose detection, I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, and that's always been, it's interesting you brought that up, because it's always been like one of those topics that comes up in canine a lot, especially on the military side. Is like, do we just go straight single purpose, kind of like a factory mindset, like you have your own job and that's solely your purpose and you'll just be good at that one specific task, so to speak, and then the other ones are destined for biting and all that good stuff. But it's interesting to hear that side of the coin. So, man, I'm going to jump in it. I want to give a quick disclaimer. Everybody, the hot topic, obviously, of the night is going to be the bark fence, kind of what most people know you for currently. So there's going to be a lot of questions oriented towards that. But, I want to be full transparency. I've never gotten to use the bark fence. I've seen some stuff here and there. I've heard great things from other trainers that's been to your seminar, but I kind of want to, dive into it from a perspective of, not knowing it. So forgive all the questions I'm going to have coming up.
No, I appreciate the questions. And it's a topic that, like when I first learned it, it took me a little while to wrap my brain around it and make sense of it. So I understand there's going to be questions and people asking why, it doesn't really make sense at first looking at it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just jumping into it, the bark fence is about creating emotions in the dog and putting the dog in the right mindset. So I like to give this analogy. If I'm walking through a restaurant and some guy shoulder bumps me and, says some stuff about me, I'm going to be pissed off. I might want to punch him in the face, but I probably won't. But if I'm walking through a restaurant and let's say I have a 16-year-old daughter and that guy grabs her ass, I'm going to punch that guy in the face and I'm going to do it way harder than I would have, just for him talking trash at me. So that's kind of what we're trying to create at the bark fence, is put these dogs in this emotional state where when they do bite, they bite with everything that they have. And the barking is just a bridge that we use to create those emotions. It's one of the vehicles we use to create the emotions. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it and there's so many benefits that come from it. But that's the main concept that I want people to think about and understand, that we're creating these emotions. We're getting really high levels of intensity in the dog. And then we're attaching that intensity to the behaviors they're going to do out on the street. So area searching, tracking, building searches, and ultimately biting. So they're doing them with emotion and like I said, very high levels of intensity. While we're doing all this, we're still maintaining very high levels of control, and we're teaching so many skills at once. We're teaching team neutrality, we're teaching targeting. So we're adding the laser there. We're teaching new skills at the bark fence. Anytime we introduce something new, we're going to throw it in at the bark fence, whether it's leg bites, muzzle fighting, prosthetics, anything new. I want the dog's first repetition of something to be done, where they're way up here, super, super intense. I don't want there to be any confusion. I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, but the example I give for that for the first rep is like, traditionally, let's say we're introducing a hidden sleeve to a dog. It's a newer dog. It's only seen bite sleeves. Hopefully, no shits in sleeves for police dogs, but only seen some sleeves and bite suits. And so we're doing it in an area search. So the dog's working odor, doesn't really know odor, and the dog finds the guy, sees the guy, doesn't really know what odor means. It's not paired with anything. He sees the guy and he doesn't really know what to do. The sleeve is hidden. So what does the decoy do? The decoy presents his arm and goes like this. Maybe he goes, hey, maybe he cracks a whip, something to entice the dog to come in and bite. And the dog goes, oh, okay, I've seen that picture before. They go in and they bite. They're not biting with everything they have. They don't have full on intensity. So, and the problem with that is that bad guys don't do that. Hey, bite me right here.
Right.
So we're using the barking as the bridge to create the emotions. And then what we do is now we start this area search. And when the dog finds the guy, we tell the dog to bark. And those emotions that we created at the bark fence start to come to life. And the dog learns through repetition at the bark fence that after I bark, 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 I bite, and I bite with intensity. And those emotions come to life while the dog is barking. So now he finds the guy. We stop the dog, tell him to bark, 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 bark. Those emotions come to life. We send him in to bite, and he bites with everything he has. So his first repetition of a hidden sleeve and his first introduction to an area search, he's done with, very high levels of intensity. And so that translates over into real bites out on the street when the dog's a little unsure, So when I started in canine, I was very fortunate to learn from some really, really talented people. We had a great culture in our canine unit. They were very good, but they were doing things an old school way, which, considering some of the old school ways I see now and that people are still doing, we did it pretty well. And it had nothing to do with me, but things were different. And so when we got dogs to bite on the street, their first bite, there are some dogs that are just savages that go out there and their first bite, they nuke people and like they're full on and that's just genetics. Not all dogs are that. So some of the dogs, like including my first dog, my second dog, they would go in and bite. And that first bite was kind of like an exploratory bite. Like they would put teeth on skin, might do a little bit of damage, not much. And I remember being brand new after my first bite, one of the senior guys going, don't worry, it's going to get better. And they did. The bites always got better. The first bite was okay. The second bite got a little better. Third bite was even better, right? Well, now we can't afford to have that happen. So the bark fence has stopped that from happening, and dogs are going in and taking care of business on the first bite. Because anytime we intro something new, they have the emotions attached. And so we use the barking as the bridge to create those emotions, and then we fade out the barking, which is a whole nother topic we can go into. But I want the barking to go away. I don't want my dog to bark every time out on the street. Sometimes it's not tactically safe. Sometimes the guy might be aware of our position. So I don't want him to bark unless I tell him to bark. So we fade out the barking while maintaining the emotions. And we do that by pairing everything together. So it's just classically conditioned in the dogs. Everything starts coming, they get paired together. An example I like to give is, you pull up to the training field and your dog gets excited. You never did anything to teach your dog to get excited to go to the training field. It was just back chained. Your dog understood that, when I pull up to the training field and this gate opens up, I'm going in and fun stuff's happening. Your dog learns that on his own. Well, we're doing the same thing. So it's biting, and then it's barking, and before that it's odor, right? So all these things start getting paired together. And so when the dog gets in odor, he's already thinking barking. But now, because he's thinking barking, the emotions come to life, come about in him. And now he can go right into biting with the same emotion without the barking. So all these things become paired together, systematically. So it's really been a game changer for us, and everyone that's using it, I think, is had the same success. It's a great tool. It's not the be all end all. There is no be all end all in dog training.
No, there never is.
Right. I hear people criticizing like, oh well, the dog did the bark fence at a 2-day seminar and then went out and had a failure. Well, a 2-day seminar, like, give me a break. Like that's a basic foundation. And what else is the dog doing? Is the handler going out and doing muzzles? Is the handler doing hidden sleeves? Is the handler doing prosthetics? And are they keeping that momentum up? We come out of canine school with these new dogs, and guys just sit back and relax and go, oh, I finished canine school. Well, that's not cutting it, man. Like, you got to keep that momentum up every night, every shift. You should be doing some kind of realistic scenario where the dog is biting a prosthetic, a hidden sleeve, or he's doing muzzles. And that's the one people hate doing, but muzzles are the most important, one of the most important. Bark fence is just a foundational piece where we can create some emotions, but these things that we've always done are still tried and true and need to be done. I think back in the day, my unit was successful way before me in getting dogs to engage. I've seen one failure in 17 years with all our dogs. And that's because of muzzles, in my opinion, the amount of muzzles that we do. I love all those tools. I'm totally for them. And the bark fence doesn't replace them, but it does replace some other things in training, and it teaches a lot of things at once. So it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put a pin in there because I know you got a lot on this, and I definitely want to break down a lot of it. But so let's go back to the kind of to the something you said earlier, as far as like you're transitioning from what I understand of it, like equipment's being thrown in there, targeting, laser. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm trying to puzzle it all into let's say a 2-day seminar, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would imagine is there's a lot of generalization going on in that process. Like, we're not keeping the dog fixated in one element of the bark fence, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be a fence. And why is the fence there? Just for some barrier aggression. We've all seen the videos of dogs on one side of the fence or a gate. They're going crazy, and then the gate opens, and now they're like, oh, never mind. So it gives the dog an added level of security. They feel a little bit safer behind that fence. I feel safer as the decoy as well, knowing that
Right.
I would never get an inch away from a dog's face that's barking like that. If that fence
Awesome.
wasn't there, it would be too risky. But where are we going with that? So I forgot your question. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We're at the fence, and that's a good starting point and the purpose of the fence. And
That's
now transitioning into how do we get the dog to bark? Because that's going to be the first critique.
right.
I have a
Okay.
dog, he doesn't bark. What is kind of the step for that, the
Yep.
knucklehead dog, if you will?
Yeah. So we're gonna have the dog back tied on one side of the fence. We want him to be able to get very close to the fence, but not close enough to bite it. And then a decoy is going to be on the outside of the fence. You can use toys. There's nothing wrong with using toys, but I prefer now. I just go right to a hidden sleeve, but it's exposed. It's not hidden under any shirts or anything. So I'll lean over the fence and present my arm and make the dog miss. And when I do that, I squat down on the other side of the fence, and now I'm face to face with the dog and staring at them, and we're creating a little bit of prey frustration. So we're frustrating the dog a little bit, and a lot of times, most times, that's going to get the dog to bark. 1 or 2 barks, I'm going to mark it, yes, and then I stand up and I can pay him with a bite. So that's how we start it, is a little bit of prey frustration. I might only like tease them and make them miss 2 or 3 times. And then after that, they're getting the picture. They're like, okay, barking got me what I wanted. Now, this barking that they're doing and this prey frustration barking is not the barking that we're looking for. It's not the goal. The goal of this is to get like a deep, guttural, rhythmic, strong bark, and prey barking is not that. And we really want to separate the two. But in the beginning, we're going to take any kind of barking.
Right.
Okay. So, in that first session, I'm hoping to get up to 20 or 30 barks in a row, and before I pay the dog.
Okay.
Now, I'm looking for a bunch of things when I mark it. I want the dog barking at me and looking at me while he's barking. And I want the equipment, if it's on my right arm, is behind my back, so he's not staring at equipment. Okay. So I don't want him barking at equipment. I want him barking at the person, because this whole thing is about the man and not about equipment. And that's a huge part of this bark fence. is the equipment neutralization and making everything about the man. So he's barking at me, looking at me. That's when I want to mark it. I want the dog forward, like coming towards the fence, like a strong body posture. I don't want him backing up and barking, and like, I don't want him looking away. I really just want to see that the dog is committed towards me. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially in this beginning phase, is the dog might bark, but he might bark off to the side. And when the dog looks off to the side, the decoy goes, hey, 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 like over here. We really don't want to do that. That's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to wait until the dog comes back on his own, figures it out, barks at me, and then I'll pay them quickly if
Can you
they're
put a pen
struggling.
right there and just because I feel like that's one of the things I'm trying to get better at is talking about those little nuances that like kind of make or break the training. And so what I'm imagining when I hear a dog like barking to the side and the decoy reacts, now in a sense we're kind of reinforcing, hey, I bark away, I can make you react that way potentially.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exact. So the dog getting me to react and getting me to move is a reward because it kicks them into like a prey drive. So, like you said, you don't want to reward when they look away. You're staying passive and still. And that's a big, huge benefit of the bark fence as well, is that the decoy is mostly passive. I'm not moving around and trying to and making decoy like movements. I'm passive. Right. Because that's the hardest bite out on the street, is if, your first bite is a passive guy that makes no sound, no movement. Right. So why don't we just teach that from the beginning? Right. So, yeah. So that's a huge part of it. And that's the biggest mistake I see people making, is like the dog's eyes will track off to the side and the decoy will move their head over to make the dog, to get in the dog's eyesight, where you should stay there and wait for that dog to come back and look at you. And if the dog's really struggling to bark or really struggling to look at you, you can pay him just looking at you. The second his eyes come and look at you, you can, yes, stand up and pay that. And he goes, oh,
yeah.
Well, here's a piece of it. Looking at him is going to get me what I want. So yeah. And as we're going, we're just marking better and better barks. And what I mean by that is rhythmic, strong, guttural, deeper barks is what I'm looking for. Now I can bring out a little bit nastier or nicer bark by applying social pressure. So the main thing I'm doing for social pressure is eye contact. I'm staring at the dog, but everything comes into play. Dogs are masters at reading body language. So like, are my shoulders square to the dog or are my shoulders bladed to the dog? Am I blowing on him? Am I showing my teeth? Like, all those things are going to differ depending on the dog and what the dog needs. If my shoulders are square and the dog might, maybe is a little softer dog and the dog doesn't really want to look at me or wants to bark and kind of move away, well, maybe I need to blade my shoulders a little bit and make him feel a little bit more comfortable. Maybe I'll break eye contact and just look at him out of the corner of my eye. But I want him, ultimately, I want to apply some social pressure so he feels slightly threatened, just slightly, and he barks a little nastier, right? Like he's like, oh, this guy's close to me. He's not scared of me. His shoulders are square. He's showing his teeth. He's blowing on me. He's not breaking eye contact. Like I need to let him know like I'm serious, and 2 or 3 nastier barks come out. I mark that and I pay that, and then from then on, I'm just going to look for those kind of barks more and more and more. One thing I will say is, excuse me, you do have to be careful not to work the dogs in full defense. And what I mean by that, because everyone has a different definition of defense. I think back in the day, people worked dogs in defense a lot more than they do now, which is good. I'm glad I'm seeing less of it. But a dog that's in defense is, in my definition, is worrisome or fearful.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you agree?
No, 100%. And I'll put my spin on it, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't want a dog to bite because he's afraid. And I don't want to put the dog in that situation where they're teeter-tottering on fleeing or fighting and then forcing them to bite there. I want the dog to want to bite and just have like overwhelming, intense prey. So when I apply this social pressure, I like to say that I'm just kind of skimming defense, like just a tiny, tiny bit where the dog feels just slightly threatened and the bark gets a little bit nastier. I don't want to push them to the point where they're snarling and their lips are curled and they're exposing their front teeth and their mouth is short. All those defensive signs, I don't want that at all. I just want a little bit nastier of a bark. So yeah, I definitely don't want to push them into avoidance. I'm not looking to work them in defense at all.
Yeah. And I think that's like just hearing it for the first time, and like people confuse, or I don't think people are quite aware of how thin that line is on defense to push a dog into either breaking, or I would imagine for police dogs, the caliber of bite you're going to get as a result of that. It's not going to be that full mouth confident. It's more of a, dude, take this, and hopefully that works to deter you, which I would imagine is not, it's not conducive to what you see on the streets or what you would have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Their bite's going to be shallow. They're going to be trying to get away. Like the whole goal of defense is to make the threat go away.
Right.
And I want the dog that doesn't want the threat to go away, that wants to lure me in close enough so he can bite me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely don't want to push them there at all. Some of the dogs that end up being the best are the ones that won't bark. A lot of times the dogs that won't bark are very confident, and they're doing exactly that. They're baiting you to get close enough so that they can bite you. And that's what I want to see, and it's natural. Now I still want to teach them to bark so I can use that. And it usually takes a little bit more work to get them to bark, but it absolutely can be done.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because one of the reasons we love doing the podcast is we get to obviously talk with a lot of different people. And one of the common trends I'm seeing right now is people preach, especially on the pet side, the art of doing nothing and all that good stuff. But yet we'll do everything to entice a dog when we're training it, whether it's trying to get it to bite, trying to get it to lure, trying to get it to do whatever. And it's like, dude, a lot of it can be done by just not with very minimal effort, and let the dog feel confident in what it's doing. And it sounds like, that's kind of carrying over to the bark fence as well.
Absolutely. Like less is more.
Yeah. That's a better way of saying it.
The less the decoy does, the better.
Mhm.
And that's a hard thing to get people out of. As a decoy, they're used to dancing around and moving around, and they want to do that when they're decoying behind the bark fence. And it's like, don't move. Like just sit there.
Just chill, dude.
Stare at the dog, and when you see what you like, I want you to act like you're scared.
Mhm.
When you see something that looks threatening or scary and the dog is threatening, then act like you're scared and go, whoa, and that's a reward for the dog. And then the dog's going to go, ooh, I got this guy, right? And he's going to do it more. So, trying to simplify like bark fence and decoying to guys, I think stupid line that I came up with. I don't know if it really makes sense to anyone, but it makes sense to me. Like when you're decoying, if the dog does something scary, act scared. If the dog bites and hurts you, like act hurt. You know what I mean? Doing something that's not hurting, like he's got nothing but material and he's pulling, like don't give him any reaction. But when he pushes into that bite and seeks out your arm underneath the bite suit and clamps down and, hurts you, then act hurt,
Yeah. And another thing, I want to get your thought real quick, and then I'll try to tie it back to where we left off. But so for prey drive, and this is just a thought I just had as you were talking, I don't think we are, from my understanding, and I'm speaking for myself, I always assume prey drive is always a type of motion. But when you think about it on the dog's perspective, prey drive, when they're trying to bait something in, they're very stalkish and they want you to come in and draw you in. And then the whole point is to get into an altercation to satisfy its, genetic or biological fulfillment, right? Whereas defense, they're in a different mindset. Like you said, they're trying to escape. They're trying to get out of the situation. They don't feel empowered. They just feel, a sense of, I need to make this stop in order to, keep something from happening. How do you feel, or what are your thoughts about prey drive as far as a little in depth, if you will?
Yeah. So, well, one of the first steps that, I tend to forget to go over before I go to the bark fence is that I want to make sure the dogs are not barking in prey drive. Like you said, it should be a stalking like behavior. And there doesn't have to be motion for it to be prey. Like if a dog is back tied and a guy walks out in a bite suit and is just standing there, and not standing there in a threatening manner, like he's not, shoulder square, big shoulders, eye contact. He's just standing there. The dog should not be barking. That's barking in prey, and it's unnatural for the dogs. In nature, the wolf doesn't bark at the elk before it runs after it, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, I'm coming to get you, right? It's unnatural. And so when they're barking in prey, like wires are arcing in their head and they are not thinking clearly. you will not have a clean out. You'll never get like any kind of clarity. If you want to be able to target your dog on something, you won't be able to target your dog if he's barking in prey drive. So prey drives, it's tricky. It's important. I want the dogs in prey most of the time, but we got to keep them quiet. And that's why with the bark fence, the barking has to be on command and not
Right.
just the dog doing it on their own. There's some situations where the dog can do it on their own, and we can get into that. But yeah, I think that people conflate the two. So the first step is just making sure they're quiet and prey. So what I'll do is I'll come out, I have the dog just back tied, no fence, and I'll bring a toy out. And if the toy comes out and he sees the toy and he starts barking, well, I'm going to quiet him up. Typically I'll use a slip line, sometimes slip line and e-collar, and sometimes I'll just use lemon juice. I'll spray them in the mouth with lemon juice with a quiet command, mark it when they're quiet, and go in and pay them when they're quiet. Right. So I want them quiet and pray. And at the same time, I'm teaching a bunch of other things. Like that's when I teach the out on day one is I'm teaching quiet and pray, the out. I'm teaching them to stalk, like stand and stalk the prey. And it's like a guard behavior and just all of that at once before we go into the bark fence. So if your dog's barking and prey like crazy, he can't, he loses his mind just seeing a toy or just seeing a decoy. Like you got to shut him up first, right? Get him quiet and then let him understand that when you're quiet, then I'll mark it and you get paid. This is how you get what you want, being quiet. And then we can add the barking after that. So, and I see this problem all over. Like it's not super, super common, but guys, they have that dog that's just a screamer, like comes out of the and won't shut up, like, and the dog's screaming all the way out to the training field and barking or and that drives me insane. So I tell those guys and I have them, all right, we're going to the car, you're going to step out of the car, and as soon as the dog starts barking, you're going to tell him quiet, you're going to stop your movement because moving out onto the training field is a reward.
Exactly.
Right. As you get closer, the dog's in his mind, he thinks that barking and whining and screaming got him there. So we're going to stop movement, quiet. When he's quiet, we'll start moving again. It might take you 5 minutes to get out to the training field, but you're going to do that a couple times. And then the dog's going to go, well, this barking didn't get me anything. Being quiet is what got me out where I wanted to go. So, but with that screaming, the dog's not thinking clearly. And when the dogs are screaming and prey, they're just out of their mind. And guys think that you're going to kill their drive. A lot of dogs that are screaming and prey like that or screaming coming out of the car have a lot of drive, and that's great. By quieting him, you are not suppressing the drive at all. You're capping him. You're forcing him to internalize it. And then when you say to do something, you're going to have that much more power and that much more energy put into it from the dog. So don't be afraid to correct your dog for barking and prey. It's a form of capping. And capping is so amazing, forcing these dogs to internalize it and then use it when we want.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's no different than I've never thought of it from that perspective, but I mean, it's no different than when we told a dog to sit down in the presence of a stimulus or a decoy or something that it wants. You're capping it and saying, hey, put that energy into this in order to release it into what you actually want, right? And so I'd imagine that would be the same thing when we're fixing those quote unquote leaking problems and things like that.
Absolutely. I prefer I call like when a dog won't be quiet or won't cap itself and then you down the dog or you sit the dog. I call that a false cap though. Like I don't think it's a true cap if the dog is put into an obedience behavior. So I want the dog to be able to stand there and make the active decision to cap himself without being forced into some kind of obedience. You see what I'm saying? Like, don't get me wrong, like I will down my dog and like make him stay quiet, but the down is not what's making him stay quiet. It's that I'm saying quiet. Like, and if I don't down you, you still need to stay quiet.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at. I never thought I'll be honest, like I'm the same way. Like I was one of those, make him do something else and get him to kind of fabricate it to be quiet, and I never thought of just essentially getting him to be quiet, out the gate. But very seldom in my line of work do I really deal with that issue where we have a bunch of leaking dogs and where we would need that. But no, I mean, it's a good thing to just talk about and put that out there in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's we'll kind of get back on target. I'm the same way, dude. I'm all over the place. But I did put a note in my books. We're at the point we've got we're initiating barking, right?
Yep.
Behind the fence. We've used maybe some spatial pressure and all that. And we want to get whatever bark we can get, obviously get the behavior going, let the dog know that's beneficial. And then we not slowly, kind of quickly gravitate from just one bark, two barks, and then going into, upwards to 8, 9, whatever, 20 barks. Once we get into those upper levels, is that where we're looking for the deep guttural barks, or where we're marking for that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
As you're going, probably, second session, let's say you're really looking for better barking and not just any kind of barking.
Right.
Right. You're going to try to mark those. And it might not be about a number where you're trying to hit 30 barks, 20 barks. It's just, let's get better barks. You have to be careful not to get stuck at 1 or 2 barks. If you mark 1 or 2 barks too many times, you will get stuck there. You want to develop that rhythm. Yeah. So, and from there, the next steps are going to be like, we can extend the barking without rewarding the dog. So let's say we get 10 nice barks and then I come alive and go, hey, and yell at the dog and smack the fence. The dog goes, I got him to move, right? And he gives me another 15 barks and then I can pay him, or I can do that 3 or 4 times in a row. And now I just got 60 barks. Yeah, I broke it up and I gave him some duration markers, essentially, right? That what he was doing was good, but we can extend the barking that way.
Okay. All right. So, and now how are we transitioning? Because from what I understand, one of the big concepts in bark fence is also, or one of the benefits rather, is you're able to get targeting on, the dog, clarity of task, focus on target, right? And integration from backup or whatever the case may be. What does that look like, moving that into it?
Yeah. So let's say ideally, if you've done 2 or 3 sessions with nothing but the dog and the decoy, that's ideal, right? In these 2 and 3 day seminars, I might do 1 session of that, and then I'm throwing decoys behind there just because guys want to see the results. But if you can get some nice rhythmic barking first, that's ideal. First thing I'm going to do is flood the back of the fence where the dog is standing with toys and sleeves and suits and stuff like that. Not one toy, not one piece of equipment, multiple, so the dog doesn't get obsessed with one. And usually by this point, the dog really doesn't care about those things, and they're paying attention to me, because the barking becomes very fulfilling and satisfying to the dog. And on top of that, they know that I'm going to reward them, right? They bark at me and I'm going to pay them. But let's say you got a dog that's super equipment fixated and he comes in behind the bark fence and he's just going for these toys. Well, I simply just like to correct them on the e-collar with no command. Just, a lower level E, just enough for the dog to let go. And if he lets go of that toy and then looks at me as the decoy, I might mark that right away. I might not even wait for barking, right? Like, this is wrong, but this is right. And very quickly, they're like, none of this stuff back here matters. Like, I got to pay attention to this guy. And that's how I get what I want.
Okay.
So we're going to start there. And then meanwhile, I'm throwing stuff over the fence as well. So if there's toys back there, there's big round pillows and, sleeves and all that stuff, I'm throwing stuff over the fence, and he's probably going to bite it.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to see him getting hung up on it initially. So he bites it. If he bites it and then he spits it right away and comes right back at me, I'm okay with that. I won't correct that. But if he bites something coming over the fence and then, tries to possess it, lower level correction, again, that's wrong. When he looks at me, barks at me a couple times, we'll pay that quickly. Mm-hmm. So, and I want to do that with things that I'm paying him with. So if I'm rewarding him with the hidden sleeve that's on my arm, I'm going to take that hidden sleeve off and I'm going to put it over to the side and make sure outside the fence and make sure that he's not barking at that sleeve, that he's barking at me. And when he barks at me and I want to reward him, or let's say I'm not going to reward him, just while he's barking at me, I'll take that sleeve and throw it over the fence. Like, this is what I was paying you with a second ago, but that's not the ultimate reward. Like, I'm the reward. The man is the reward. So even though that's what you were getting paid with, I throw it over the fence, he bites it, he's going to get corrected for it. And then he comes back and barks at me. I'll mark it, and then I'll pick up another piece of equipment, put that on, and pay him that way. So you have to proof him off of all the equipment that you pay him with to truly make it about the man.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good point, because I think a lot of people this is a very new concept as far as from a publicity standpoint. Like, I was reaching outwards. I'm in Texas. I'm seeing I'm hearing talks of it. So it's making its way around, right? But it seems like it's been around. It's just not been publicized as much as it probably should. But that's a very good point, because a lot of decoys I've seen people get in suits, they take the jacket, put it on backwards, and like put it on and slip a lot of items, and that's good enough for the dog. And they think because they're interacting with the suit that's on the man that that's good enough. And I'm sure obviously we've had some success. I say we as a community.
Yeah.
I've seen some success. It's just the level of success that you want from that and what you're trying to get. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, like to me, a true shedding drill, like if I shed a suit top and the dog pulls that off and I'm wearing another suit top and the dog lets go of that and comes in and bites me that I'm wearing a suit, like that's not a real shedding drill. Like I want to wear multiple pieces of equipment and then have a really good tight hidden sleeve or like a Dog Armor Pro on, and I'm shedding all this equipment and the dog is ideally like spitting it immediately and coming back at me and then biting me when he thinks that I have no equipment on. That's a real shedding drill, or I have no equipment and maybe we just don't let the dog bite me, but he's spitting that equipment and going, no, this stuff means nothing. You, the man, mean everything. So yeah, guys can get caught up in that for sure. But yeah, just real quick on the history of the bark fence. Like, I don't know exactly where it came from. It's been around for many years. I didn't create it. I didn't make it what it is today. I learned it from a guy named Mike Lorraine, who's an extremely talented dog trainer down in Palm Beach. And he's the one who took it from the sport world and transformed it into something that's adaptive to police work, and just brilliant on how he did it. And from there, we keep evolving with it. So I didn't invent this. He didn't invent this.
Yeah.
He's the one who transformed it into the modern style that you're seeing that fits for police and military dogs. But yeah, and it has gained popularity, and with popularity, then people hate on it too,
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm super excited that you're here, like going in depth on it. It's just another platform, not that we're this huge, whatever podcast, but it's just one of those things where people can we can dismiss some of the rumors and dispel some of it. But another question I had, Ben, was, I was thinking about it as far as, do you ever use this as like a metric? Like, for, let's say we have a dog where maybe the genetic bandwidth is just not quite there. And like in my line of work, like if you get assigned a dog to your kennels, you're pretty much stuck with that because we can only take from one vendor, and it's not like we can just get rid of it and try to find another replacement. It's like, good luck. So we're praying that this dog has everything that we want. Have you seen any of that where it's like, dude, we can make it look good, but just know his heart isn't in it?
Yeah. The bark fence can bring out more in dogs for sure, but you can't make a dog something that it's not. Ultimately the genetics are really important. I mean, the most important thing. So if the dog's a turd, the dog's always going to be a turd. We could polish it up and maybe make it look better in the bark fence, but ultimately when under stress, the dog's going to default back to what it really is. So I don't use it to like test dogs, but you will definitely see things in dogs.
And that's what I'm getting at. And I'm glad that's a good point. I'm not saying recommending to use it as like to test a dog. I'm just saying like in the process of going through the steps and everything else, I was just wondering if you've ever seen dogs that are like, this may not be.
Yeah. I mean, so dogs that are defensive, like you'll see they have an impressive bark and they'll bark nicely, but like you'll see that they kind of like, they hang back on the fence. They don't want to be like all the way forward on the fence. And then when they do bite, they're, like you mentioned, they're shallow, they're pulling, they don't really want to be there. They want you to go away. So sometimes that'll come out if the dog is like all defense, like not much prey. And so initially looking at it, you might think, oh, this dog's got it because the bark is impressive. Well, the bark's impressive because he wants you to go away. And he doesn't want you to be there. So there's been a few dogs that, traveling the country that we've seen that we're like, hey man, we have to have that tough conversation of, exactly. I don't know if this dog can do this police job, but the bark fence didn't push them there. That's where they were at before. And, they always come to us and go, hey, I'm hoping I can build the dog because these are the problems I'm having. And it's always, well, we'll see what we can do, but there's only so much you can do. We're not making miracles here,
Yeah, I guess that's I would imagine that's some of the expectation. It's like, all right, you're promoting the bark fence, and it's like what you said at the beginning of the podcast. It's not the end all be all. This isn't gonna make your dog 100%. and it's not going to make your dog, if it's genetically just not sound or not fit for the job, it's not an instrument to fix that either.
No,
No. Yep.
it helps a lot with clearing things up. It helps a lot with engagement issues, but the dog has to have the genetic blueprint to start with. I'll give you an example. One of the local agencies came to me. They had a dog that looked great in training. They're like, he crushes muzzles. Like, we don't see anything wrong with him. So I bring him out. I test him. Sure enough, he looks great and everything, but he had multiple failures on the street. And one of the hardest biting dogs I've ever caught. But he had multiple failures on the street. And what was missing with that dog, because that dog had the genetics, it was just missing the emotion behind what was happening, behind the behaviors. So the bark fence, I think we did 2 sessions a week for 4 weeks. So we got about 8 sessions in, and the dog went out and really took care of business and has been crushing it ever since. So it can fix those engagement issues if the dog has what it needs, right? But we can't make miracles here. Nothing's gonna fix that, if the dog doesn't have what it takes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I know you got to go, and we're start wrapping this up. But now for like well, I guess I kind of already answered my other question as far as like, I know for like the military, or from what I've heard and everything, we're seeing like a shift in caliber of dogs. I mean, just from COVID pretty much is when I saw it the most, where these dogs are not like, I mean, I think you and I have been in this for about relatively the same time, give or take a few years. And like, 7, 8, 10 years ago, we were seeing some dogs that could accept a lot of stress, a lot of correction, and, and you could get them out of it. And it was pretty black and white training, if I'm to be honest. You could make things happen. And what I'm seeing in dogs currently is not that way. Does the bark fence, I don't want to, it's a lack of better words, but kind of not cater to it, but does it kind of help facilitate that gap in caliber?
I would say absolutely, but not just the bark fence. Like, I would say it's a combination of everything. Like, I kind of call it like a system. But the way that we're training dogs now, especially guys that are, probably listening to this podcast, guys that are going out and trying to learn more every day, like myself, we're using modern techniques of training, operant conditioning and classical conditioning in ways where the dog understands things a lot better. So with everything paired together, with us being fair to the dog, teaching things operantly. So we use a ton of positive reinforcement, right? We use food, things that were big no-nos, like when I started. We use toys, all these things to shape behaviors, and then understanding how to be fair to the dog and keeping things black and white for the dog, paired with the bark fence, the bungee, it absolutely makes a big difference, because like you said, we don't have the dogs that we had, 15, 20 years ago. It was like, ideally, I want a dog that doesn't need the bark fence to go out and bite somebody, right? And
yeah, of course.
And dogs can go out and bite people without the bark fence. There's no question about that. That's been proven for years and years. But the skills that we can teach with the bark fence are unbelievable. And we can take that dog that may not have engaged, and I think we can get them to engage using the bark fence if they have the right genetics, where, traditional training had failed to get this dog to engage. And part of it, a lot of what we did in the past was tricking dogs, right? Like, look at old school detection. I mean, you're making a toy appear out of nowhere. It's all like magic and trickery, and like making the dog think that he's biting equipment when he's really biting the person. That was the whole goal. And now we're not tricking them. We're teaching them. We're training them. We're teaching them skills instead of trying to trick them. And with these skills and them understanding it and us keeping it black and white, it goes a long, long way. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is having a super clean verbal out, because to me, that makes things black and white for the dog. Like, when your out's really clean, I know your in is usually really clean too. Like, your dog understands when he can bite and when he can't bite. But when you muddy that up and you make it gray, and sometimes the dog can bite, or sometimes the dog gets corrected for, not outing after 5 seconds, and sometimes it's 3 seconds, and sometimes it's 10. Like, it's super muddy to the dog. But when it's crystal clear, there's a lot of power in that. So I know it's a long-winded answer for,
No.
Yeah, I think the bark fence paired with everything, we can bridge that gap 100%, because I think without the bark fence, some of these dogs would be struggling to actually go out and engage. They might look okay out on the street, and I'm seeing it. I see it around in some of the agencies around me that are reluctant to try it. They don't want to try something new, for whatever reason. There are traditional methods that worked years ago, and I'm talking about really good dog trainers that got a lot of dogs to engage on the street are struggling now, and that's where I think the bark fence can come in and can help. Because if the dog's close genetically, I think we can get them there with the bark fence.
Right. No, that was excellent, dude. That covered a lot. I'm trying to avoid, like, I have so many thoughts going in my head about, like, now I want to talk about outing. I want to talk about all this good stuff. So we won't go too much down the rabbit hole.
I got more time, so don't feel like I'm
sure?
rushed. Yeah. I mean,
All right, I'll close out the bark fence.
an hour.
Yeah, I'll close out the bark fence just so for those listening, we can kind of put that to rest. Let's get into the how do we transition. If I'm being, I'll say ignorant, but like if I don't understand the method and can't see past the superficial, okay, I get it. We got the dog biting with emotion. He's ready. He's biting the man, but there's still that barrier and all this good stuff and everything. Can you speak on like just briefly how we get through that?
Yeah, so we got to transition away from the bark fence. That's the most important part, and that's one of the critiques you'll hear is, oh, the dog looks great, but take the fence away. Well, it's super easy to transition away from the fence. Like, all we're doing behind the bark fence is we have to put the barking on command. So when I tell the dog to bark, I'm doing it 3 different ways. I'm using a verbal command, grabbing them by the harness and pulling them back away from the decoy, maybe like a half an inch. I just want them to feel the pressure of the harness in their chest. And I'm tapping them on the side. So I have 3 different ways to tell the dog to bark. So what I'll do to transition it is I'll do half a bark fence session. I might give him 1 or 2 bites. And then the decoy will run off and the dog gets to watch him run off and he'll go and disappear in some like small little wooded area. And there's a little pursuit. And then now the decoy's out of sight. The dog turns on his nose, works odor. And then we get to a point where he can see the guy. And now I have to hold him up and I have to get him to bark here. And before I send him into the bite. So I'm going to grab him by the harness, tap him on the side and tell him to bark. Cause now I have these 3 different ways. And when I get, maybe this time I might only get 2 or 3 nice barks. When I get those barks, I mark it with the bite command. And then I walk the dog into the bite and he gets the bite there. So that's the initial transition. So now I'm going to go out and, all right, now the next session doesn't start behind the fence. It's going to be a traditional area search where he starts working odor, pinpoints it. I'm going to hold him up, tell him to bark, 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 bark. He goes in. I mark the barking I like with the bite command, and I start moving him once I give that marker. He moves in and bites. So after a few reps of that, when I go to do the area search and I see at the end, when he's getting close, like he is all in, just is trying his hardest to get into bite. Like, and you can tell he's going to bite with everything he has, which usually only takes a couple reps. Then I'm not stopping him and telling him to bark. Now it's right into the bite.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm fading out the barking now. Okay.
Right.
So that's the transition there. And then there's a little bit different transition for like a building search, but super easy. I could explain it real quick. I like to start a building search. And like I said, I want them doing it with intensity and emotion. So I'll have the dog outside. He already knows barking. Okay. His barking's on command. A decoy is going to come out of the building and the dog's going to see him. He's going to be in a bite suit. I'm fine with that for now. I hold the dog. I tell him to bark at the guy. He barks at the guy. The guy runs in the building. I hold the dog up. He goes into a room, a couple rooms down, and leaves the door open. I tell him, find him, and I let him go. He's going to go in. He's going to push his way into the room. He doesn't have to stop and bark, and he gets to go in and bite right away. Okay. Now I bring him outside, and the decoy appears again. I tell him to bark, 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 bark. Decoy runs off, goes in that same room, closes the door. So now I release the dog and the dog goes in there with intensity and intent. And like, he really wants to bite this guy. And when he can't get to him, he's going to turn on his nose and he's going to start checking door seams. And so the dog learns to search. Actually, we're not even teaching him to search, right? He does it on his own because he already knows how to do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they start hammering door seams and you're like, wow, I didn't spend weeks and weeks door seams and like putting hot dogs under door seams and all that stuff. The dog just goes in and does it because he's searching with the intensity. And so he hits that door seam. You see the change in behavior. He might not bark right away. So then you would go up, grab him by the harness, tap him on the side and tell him to bark. He barks 4 or 5 times, door flies open, he goes in and he bites, right? So we just repeat that process to the point where now the dog doesn't need me to come up and tell him to bark. The dog
Right.
finds them, checks all the door seams, finds them, and barks on his own. And we're not popping the door at one bark. Ideally, I want 15, 20 barks most times. In the beginning, it's going to be a little bit less and we'll build up to that. But,
Of course.
to me, it's impressive when a dog checks a door seam and you see the change in behavior and just goes into this strong rhythmic barking and it's relentless and nonstop until that door pops open. There's no mistaking that. It's not. And then he looks over at the handler and goes,
Yep.
"Are you going to open this?" Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Go ahead. Good.
so you're getting like a mini agitation session in right before the
Mhm.
bite, and so he's going to go in with intensity, but go ahead. You were saying,
No, I was just laughing because we do a similar fashion for our building searches and stuff like that. The requirement isn't strictly that they have to bark or anything like that. Just offer an aggressive alert of some type so they can scratch and all that good stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, no, you just reminded me of like first fighting with a dog that's like in this drive state and trying to get him to, you just saw a decoy jump in front of the door and go boo 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 and then run. And now
yeah,
you're trying to battle with him and saying, hey, sniff this, by the way, and all
right,
that stuff. So when I transition into just letting the dog off leash, letting him know what he's in there to do, obviously identical to what you just said, and then let him do the work. We kind of keep the proximity to where it's pretty cut and dry, like it's only, maybe one of two doors or whatever. But anyways, but we let him work it on his own and the dog makes the association. We build the frustration, we get the response that we need, so forth and so forth. But what I loved about it was, one, it eliminated what you said about dogs sniffing, and then they give either the response, and then it's like only good for two or three, and then they look at you like, dude, are you gonna open the door, or who's doing it here? And
right.
that's So it's just it just took me back for a moment, but yeah,
Yeah, it eliminates all that
yes, yeah,
begging dogs to check door seams and look, we can teach a pattern later if you're really strict on the pattern, but
exactly.
I'm not super strict on the pattern. I think that I'll let the dogs work, and then if I need them to come back and check something, I can always direct them and call them back and have them check it. But that's where the handler comes in. That's where they're a team.
Yeah, exactly. All right, real quick, and then we will wrap this up. Outing.
Yeah.
Just a brief rundown, because that's one John and I kind of were hesitant to talk about because it seems like it's getting better. I will say that from what I've seen coming into the industry to where we're at now, but it still seems like it's an ongoing issue for sure. So you'll be the first one to actually be on air to talk about your concept of outing, but I'm always interested in it, dude. That's like one of my tangents
Yeah.
that I love to talk about.
Yeah, same. And outing to me was always mystical as well, because I came from a place where we barely could get our dogs to out, and that's what we wanted, because that's
Yeah.
what we thought made a better street dog, was a dog that didn't out. And so we would struggle to certify every year, and we would fight our dogs for, whatever, a couple of weeks leading up to certification and barely certify, but that's what we thought we wanted, or that's what we thought was best. And it worked, but now, like, I just told my guys last night, hey, we're certifying in 2 weeks. And everyone, okay, like, we're not going to do anything different. We don't need to prepare for it,
Right.
So outing it's not that difficult, but people make it, they overcomplicate it. I like to simplify everything and make everything very efficient. So a couple big things: the dog can't be barking and pray, like I talked about. We have to have them quiet and pray. And then once we have that, I want to teach the dog that if you let go of it, you're going to get it again. And it's one toy. We're not tricking the dog with multiple toys. At some point, you got to lie to the dog. So I'm going to use one toy, and I'm going to tell the dog to out. And let's say it's a green dog. The dog doesn't know anything about outing, doesn't know what the out command is. I'm going to tell them to out. They're not going to do it. I'm going to correct them. Typically, I like using an e-collar. I know sometimes your guys' hands are tied,
Right.
but an e-collar, as soon as they spit it, I'm gonna tell them to out it. I'll use a command drop. They don't do it. It's no, 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 and I'm tapping the E on every no, and I'm finding that level. And this is their introduction to the e-collar. Like, I don't spend any time conditioning the e-collar. They don't wear it. This is the first time they've worn an e-collar, to my knowledge, right?
Mhm.
I think all that stuff it can be beneficial, but I think it can also be a waste of time. So
Okay.
no, 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 I'm tapping the e-collar. When they go burr and they spit the toy, then I tell them to get it again. And I have a sleeve leash attached to it. I'm using those big round bite pillows. I like the one from Underdog, and it's got a sleeve leash attached to it. So they they spit it. As soon as he spits it, I say, get it. And I move it with the sleeve leash, or I'll kick it. And then they bite it again. Right. So I kick them into prey drive after this correction. They got a little bit of an unfair correction because they don't know why they got corrected, but then I get them to bite it again right afterwards. So I'm going to repeat that process. And typically in one session, I have the dog outing verbally super, super clean. So it's drop, no, no. And the correction only comes on the word no. It never comes on a drop command or
Okay.
an out command. It's always drop and then no, no, no. And I keep correcting until they spit it. As soon as they spit it, get it, and they get it again.
Quick question on
Yeah.
that. Now, is the dog, is he on just a leash or back tied, or what is the setup for the dog?
So he's back tied. And then I'm in front of him and I have the toy with the sleeve leash. And I also hold a leash that's hooked onto something onto his neck.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I want to stop the dog from doing things that I don't like, which is going to be bouncing, barking, right? And like,
Yeah.
so I want him standing, stalking the toy and not bouncing and being quiet. When I see those things, that's the only time I mark it. Yes. And I'll move in and pay them with the toy. So
Okay.
once I get those things and they're on the back tie, that's how they get paid. So another thing with the e-collar is you want to find a level that the dog wants to avoid, right? Like I'm not going straight up to the highest level, but I'm also not going to nag the dog. Like if the dog outs after 5 no's on a 2, I'm not going to a 3. I'm going to go to a 4 on the next one. And when I say no, I want him to go burr and like be like, well, I don't want that again, right? And then when you tell them
Right.
get it, they bite the toy again. And if they don't want to bite it, what I do is I kick them into prey drive. So they might be in a little bit of a funk after getting a correction, a heavy correction. So we get away with that correction by kicking them into prey. What I mean is, so now they got this heavy correction for not outing it. The toy hits the ground. They're like, well, I'm not sure I want to bite that. Well, then you tell them get it and you kick it over to the side and now it's prey. And now he's chasing it over to one side. As he goes to bite it, I pull it out from under his chin and I kick it the other way. And now he's chasing it the other way. So he just went from being in this funk to like, I gotta get this thing. And he's in prey and having the time of his life. So that's how we get away with that unfair correction. And then he bites it. I'll give it a little heartbeat on the sleeve leash. I'll let it go dead, drop. And then most times after that, he's going to go, I remember last time he goes and spits it.
Right.
And he spits it, he gets it again. Get it. And he gets to bite it again, right? So it's that over and over and over again, not just correcting the dog for not outing, but rewarding him for doing it right.
And I think that's, I mean, and struggling to get my words together because I'm sure somebody else is going to come on here and say, oh, something polar opposite of what you just said.
Sure.
And I want to clarify, like, this is what I would call like a buffet for this podcast. Like, you take what you want and you use what's best for your, whatever it is that you do with dogs. As long as it's humane and all that good stuff. But from what I just heard about outing, I think that's the golden ticket that people forget. It's easy. It's very humanistic for a person to correct something you don't like, right? Like everybody will do. We always act on avoidance and things that we don't like. That's very natural. And we turn that over to dogs. But then the buildup has to be there. If I give you, like you said, an unfair correction or a very firm correction, I want to kind of make it worth your while and pray or play, for lack of better words, whatever the case may be. There has to be some type of recovery aspect in that in order to keep the dog engaged in the system so that it becomes black and white.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the next step is going to be making it even more black and white. So now when the dog drops the toy, he can't bite it until I tell him he can bite it. So I purposely, when he outs it and it lands under his chin, I don't pull it away. And he's going to go for it again. And when he does, I don't say drop. I don't tell him to out again. I say no. And I correct him. And when he makes the decision not to bite it again, then when I'm ready, I'll tell him to bite it again. So I have to make it very clear that you can bite it whenever I tell you to. And that's it. You can't just bite it because it's there. And then we end the session with put the toy off on the ground. And now you got to walk the dog over the toy on your way back to the car. And he's not allowed to go for it. If he goes for it, no, correct. And we keep going, come back along. If he goes over the toy and he ignores it, guess what we're doing? Telling him to get it.
Right.
Now you can bite it because you ignored it and you waited for my command. So I'm going to let you have it. So doing that really solidifies that you can't bite it until I tell you can bite it. Like if you can't have an out on a toy or an out on a man if your dog can't get within 6 inches of that toy or man and not try to bite it without permission.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have
Yeah,
to
that makes sense.
solidify that you can only bite it when I tell you you can bite it. Now there's exceptions, right? Like at the end of a track, at the end of a building search, like the find 'em command, the track command, those are permission to bite. So they're not waiting for my permission to bite there, and that's very easy. Like we don't even have to teach that. Like
Yeah,
they
that's kind of
want to bite.
innate in the dog. Like we can always revisit that and say, hey, this is you do what you're supposed to do.
Right. And
Right.
when they don't get corrected, they're like, this is permission. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
All right. I know John's having some technical difficulties. He just texted me. He has 2 questions, and then we'll end it on that one.
yeah.
I'm trying to read his text. Let's see. All right. One of the things he's very impressed by is how do you get a team involved? Because it seems like your department's pretty. The dogs, are pretty consistent from what I've seen on social media and heard. And he's going into his own department, so he wants to know, how do you get that team
Yeah.
camaraderie or get everybody involved?
So it's funny you mentioned that because like everyone talks about like SWAT integration and getting team neutrality and all that stuff, and it's cool. It's trendy. It's fun. I'm not knocking it at all, but we don't do any SWAT integration training, and our dogs integrate with the SWAT team and patrol just because of what we do at the bark fence and then what we do afterwards. And so all we do is we talked about having the dead equipment behind the fence. Well, after we do one session of that, we're putting 2 guys in bite suits, one on each side of the dog, and now the dog's not allowed to bite those guys in the bite suit. And usually, if the lead up is good, the training's good on the way up, they won't even look at those guys. They're gonna bark at the civil guy that's wearing shorts and a t-shirt, not wearing BDUs, right? Not wearing multicam or whatever you guys wear.
As the decoy, you're not
As the
wearing
decoy,
you're not wearing the thing that's supposed to be backing you up as well.
exactly. So it drives me crazy. Everyone spends all this time on team neutrality, and then their decoys wearing the same pants that they wear.
Yeah.
It drives me insane. So the decoy is always in shorts and a t-shirt, and a t-shirt that does not look like your uniform. And so now if the dog goes to bite and the decoy's in bite suits, it's the same process. If we have to, we'll correct them. As soon as he comes back on the civil decoy, barks at him, mark it and pay it. And that goes super, super quick. And then we just like we did with the area search, we'll do like half a session behind the fence, and then we'll blow out of the fence with those decoys and bite suits, like running ahead of the dog, and the dog's kind of targeting the civil decoy in between them as these guys in suits are running. And we're trying to keep the dog focused on the civil decoy. And we move up to the confrontation where those guys in suits are right on the side, and their arms are out like they're pointing guns, and
Right.
they're giving commands and all that stuff. And at the bark fence, they're yelling all the police commands. On top of that, we're putting guys in uniform on the outside of the fence, yelling and screaming police commands, all the stuff the dogs are going to hear. We're clicking handcuffs, banging pool noodles, and just doing random stuff to just neutralize the dog to all of that. Like none of this
Right.
stuff matters. Just pay attention to this civil and passive decoy. That is the only thing that's going to get you paid,
Yeah. And then his second follow along question with that, as far as the kennel itself, like the canine, like your team, or I'm not sure what your officers that
Yeah.
are part of the canine unit, the section. How do you, or what have you found successful for getting them involved? Because it seems like you guys train pretty well together, like as a section, and your guys are. I mean, I don't know personally like how close knit you are, but professionally speaking, it seems like you guys have a good hold on you.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. Excuse me.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're good, man.
Sorry, I just need to clear my throat. That's
forget.
a tough one because my unit is just like we just have great people in it that are motivated. I mean that you know what I mean? So it's hard to, they want to be there. They really want to be in canine. They love their job. It's a lifestyle. It's their passion, They're not just doing the bare minimum, and so it's easy to get them involved. They want to be involved. They want to decoy. They want to help out. They want to learn. So I'm super spoiled with the guys and girl in my unit because they're just awesome. So how do we get these people involved that don't really want to be involved? It's tough. Is it sometimes showing them their inadequacies or like things that like, hey, here's the problem and this is why you need to do this to fix this. This will help. Like a little bit of humbling sometimes might work.
Yeah.
But it could also backfire and go the opposite direction and go, and then where they just go, oh, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. Like that's unrealistic or whatever the excuse is. But the bottom line is the guys and girls need to be motivated to want to do it, to really participate. Otherwise,
Good
you're
luck, dude.
yeah,
Yeah, because I've been in several kennels and I've seen it both ways. Like I've had you just have that batch of guys and girls that just want to be there. Like you said, it's a lifestyle, and I
yeah,
don't think people understand that. Like especially in the line of work that you're doing, where lives are literally on the line. Like you have to want to be a part of every aspect of that. But
right. There's no
yeah,
real
no,
subpar canine handlers, and unfortunately, there are quite a few. Not because they suck, just because they don't put in the effort. You
right.
know, which is a shame.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Man, I appreciate it. Definitely. I mean, you didn't have to do this. Like we met once in person through a mutual friend, through Travis, and I appreciate the hospitality you had then, and carrying it forward. I know immediately after it settled down, I was like, hey, can you jump on? And I mean, you've been a stellar dude, man, across the board, man. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate your time just doing this and sitting down with us, even though John's just sitting there, but
No,
he's listening.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I really appreciate you having me on, and thanks for taking the time. My goal has always been to just try and help as many people as I can. And when this stuff started and I learned this stuff from Mike Lorraine, I just wanted to get the information out there. And that's how I got involved in hits and started teaching, was because I had been through the struggles of the old ways of doing things, fighting with dogs. And I wanted people to have what we have now, and go, hey, it can be much better. So we enjoy training now. It's a lot more fun. We're not fighting dogs. And,
That's the
so
best.
I just want to get it out there and help people. So,
Yeah, and speaking of, how do people get in touch with you, and what's how do they get to
yeah,
be in a seminar with you, or whatever the case may be?
they can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram. It's Erik Good K9, Eric with a K, K9 and a letter K, number 9. And my email is the same. It's ericgoodk9@gmail.com.
Okay.
So, they can reach out there, and, I'm more than happy to come travel the country and teach. I'm pretty busy now, but,
Yeah, man. That's
stuff.
good.
Yeah, I enjoy it. So very blessed.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Eric, once again, thank you for coming on. Hopefully, we'll be interacting. I'll be in one of your seminars, hopefully soon.
Yep.
Thanks again for coming on. I know you got to go to work soon.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that'll do it for another episode of Working Dogs and Whiskey.